Welcome back to Media Talks TV with your host, Tony J. Before I start this broadcast, I'd like to put out a brief disclaimer before I start this video. I do not condone nor condone the mocking nor the celebration or the lack of empathy towards the death and assassination of Charlie Kirk. What happened to Charlie Kirk was disgusting. It was aberrant and does not stand for the foundational principles of the United States. And anybody that condones what many people have said or done over the past couple of days, I disavow it and I disavow you. And I think you're a disgusting, vile person to mock somebody's death on social media. Let me be abundantly clear that Charlie Kirk has children and a wife, and making fun of anybody under the guise of because you don't agree with some of their points of view is disgusting. So I stand on this channel as a disclaimer that if anybody who is a part of my subscriber base that has made fun of Charlie Kirk or made fun of his family, please, or condone his death, please unsubscribe now because I won't have any of my subscribers making fun of this issue. Now, with that out the way, let me say a couple of things because what we just witnessed on that Wednesday, I was shocked and in some ways very scared about where the direction of the United States is going. I've listened to Charlie Kirk a couple of times. Although I might not have agreed with many of his points, no one on either side, left or right, deserves death for their points of view. And one of the reasons why I started this channel, Media Talks, is because I wanted to have a base where people can push back on certain misinformation, analyze media, break down media, talk about the impacts of media. And we can't, the conversation that's not being had in the realm of the traditional media is this issue of how social media has become a cancer on society and actually around the world. Because if you look at and you just step back and you analyze things, social media is breaking down other tenets of society It's breaking down institutions, it's crumbling our most sacred institutions as we speak. There was an incident in Nepal not too long ago where the students and where younger people rebelled against the government and burned the government building down because of a supposed ban on social media. If you don't take that as a warning of what's next to come in the United States, look at Nepal. Look at what they're doing in Nepal and the effects that it's having on their government with the issue of social media. We haven't really had a conversation, and many politicians haven't had this conversation about putting up guardrails with social media. And I feel like Charlie Kirk's death was the issue of what caused his death, which was social media. There are good things about social media, and then there are bad things about social media. For one, the best thing about social media is that it's made our world a lot closer. It's made our world a lot smaller. So it doesn't take much to get on a phone and talk to somebody in another continent. It doesn't take that much to video chat with somebody in another continent. That's the beauty of social media. But also, there's issues that are leading to a crux on social media. And one of those things is how our data is being processed by the government, how the government uses our data. Mostly anything and everything isn't private anymore. But it's also one of the bigger issues is social media has become a rest haven for radicalization. And that's a fact. People pick up this information, people pick up hearsay and misinformation, and they take it and they run with it. And especially with younger kids, the generation behind me, Gen Z and Gen Alpha, are at a crossroads right now because they're getting all of their information off of social media. My generation, the millennials, we knew a time period before social media. We knew a time period where if you wanted to talk to somebody, you had to talk over a cordless phone or you had to talk to them face to face. The last 15 years of social media has led to social tool breakdowns. For one, the issue with dating and relationships and how we connect with each other. Most people do not connect with each other anymore. People don't want to go out anymore to certain places to meet up when they could meet on their phones. COVID 19 really turned the world upside down to where now there isn't really a way to course reverse all this shit that's going on in the United States, the dysfunctions. You have all these fringe movements popping up on social media. You have people that are so radicalized that They have meet in these Discord groups. Discord holds a lot of secrets and problems. And then you have the issue of social media and right wing media kind of colliding with left wing media. You're seeing a culture war take place in the United States that's really going to bring this country to its knees if we don't course reverse what's what's about to happen. And like I've said, this incident is just really the tipping point of what's about to come, because the extremism on both sides is is getting very, very dangerous. It's a pressure cooker. Ever since, and I'm going to play devil's advocate in this case. Ever since Donald Trump became president, and I'm talking going all the way back to when he first went down the escalator at Trump Plaza, we have seen people on the right, well, on the left, say and compare Donald Trump to a fascist. We've had seen all these things in the media, the name calling, the comparing him to a Nazi, a Hitler, and all these disgusting, vile things. We saw even music videos, people making fun of Donald Trump. They had songs called "Fuck Donald Trump" and all this stuff that came out during 2016 during the campaign, and yet nobody really wants to talk about that. Then you had people getting harassed for wearing a Trump hat, walking around with a MAGA hat on, people being beat up in the streets. And even if I speak about these things and I talk about these things, I get labeled a certain way. Because then it's like when you talk about these things, even in the general public, you have black folks that will label you racist if you support somebody on the right, and then there are also malicious things that happen to people who have supported Donald Trump. There was a time that I could remember when everybody loved Donald Trump, when everybody was rappers was bringing him up in his music videos, talking about getting that Trump money and getting and talking about how they wanted money like Donald Trump. They worshipped him in the 90s. They loved him. And all of a sudden, when he ran for president, then all this hatred came his way, which I never really understood. I never seen this man do anything bad to anybody. You know, his personal life, I know nothing about. A lot of people whom I've talked to, whom were my friends, distanced themselves from me because I had a critical ire about Democratic politics and also right wing politics. These things are causing rifts within personal relationships. You're hearing people break up their friendships because they're a Trump supporter or they didn't want to be associated with a Trump supporter. It shouldn't never ever come to that, but it did. This is a culture war that's been taking place for a while. But it all didn't start behind Obama. And I know a lot of people will say, well, all of this started with Obama, but I'm going to get to that point. But let's go even further back, though. Let's go back to during the 2000s when Bush was president, when you couldn't criticize anybody on the right, or you couldn't criticize the president even then, even though he was shipping people off to war and getting them killed. Millions of people came back dead or maimed or blinded by roadside bombs. But if you criticize the president about that, then you had people saying either you're with America or you're with the terrorists. And that's where the bullshit really started. When we started when we thought that the president of the United States was above reproach when it came to the war in Iraq and the war in Afghanistan. And when we started there, that's when we started going down the rabbit hole. When you can't criticize your own leaders and you think that your leaders are above reproach, that's when a nation is really in trouble. And then when Obama became president and he initiated drone strikes in Yemen and Libya, and we couldn't criticize him about it, then this whole thing of he was above reproach because he was the first black president. We couldn't criticize Obama because he was black. In criticizing the president of the United States, the first black president of the United States, now it's become, oh, well, now you're racist. So then the coin flips to them, to anybody who criticizes Obama. And now, when we have President Trump, this is where the conundrum starts. Everybody on the left starts demonizing the right. And this is one of the primary reasons why Charlie Kirk existed, because he wanted to engage with the left in such a way to expose their own biases. And a lot of them did have, and to be admittingly true, a lot of them on both sides both had their own biases. But that's the problem. If people are getting killed for an idea, for expressing their opinion, and the dissent is through an act of violence, there's no coming back for the United States, unfortunately. Not from this. We're getting to a point where things are being very shaky on both sides. Before this whole incident, there was issues with, you know, even the president himself not liking to be criticized. When he saw South Park episodes, he started getting a little angry, and everything was, it was just a general distraction. People being pointed out for their follies and not being able to take some bent of criticism about their actions and how their actions are affecting other people. and then the canceling of Stephen Colbert. And you can say what you want. There's no reason. There's never been a reason for us to cancel Stephen Colbert. And then you got all these people, MSNBC, people that have been in legacy media, losing their jobs, realizing that, you know, because they've always had a one sided view of the world and not seen the other side or not allow those people to have a platform because it causes a pendulum swing. And I feel like now the pendulum is swinging in the opposite direction because they're playing the same type of tactics. The right is playing the same type of tactics that the left is playing. People are losing their jobs left and right, all because of their viewpoints and expressing their views. And if it's getting to that point, then what is the actual point of free speech if it ain't free? The first step to an autocratic society is to remove the voices of the people, to not allow them to criticize each other. And what that person just did, he removed the voices of the people. So then they're going to speak louder now. You don't have to like the right. I don't particularly care much for the right, but they do have the right to speak their opinions on certain things. But we have had a majority in this country, a liberal majority, that have sought to deplatform people that don't have a liberal agenda or a liberal opinion. Many of the television stations have always been overwhelmingly liberal, and of course, there hasn't been a dismantling of it. There hasn't been a balance, and that's where the culture wars are starting. And let's not mistake it. This is a culture war that we're in, and we're not the right. The Democrats are not winning this one, and it's going to be a very long time before we get a Democratic majority back again in this country because what's about to happen, it's going to go in the opposite direction. Now I've been saying this for a long time how the uh, Democrats had overplayed their hand, and they did overplay their hand in a lot of issues, forcing these trans rights issues and LGBTQ issues down people's throats and telling people that they had to refer to certain pronouns and then turning around and alienating young men from the party, which pushed them to the right, telling them that they're toxic because they were born a man. All this stuff about toxic masculinity reverberating through social media and all these other things, and overwhelmingly pushing women ahead of boys as if, trying to flip the agenda that we live in a patriarchal society when in reality men are being left behind in the workforce overwhelmingly, and women are making more money than men, which creates that complicated imbalance. And it's these types of issues that have caused a reverber a kind of reverberation through the Republican Party because they feel like their voice has been silenced too much. So they're coming back with a retribution. And I feel like, after this incident, there's going to be a lot of retribution. It's just going to be tit for tat, culture war. Our policies are going to reflect that. Now that Donald Trump has the upper hand, our policies are going to be overwhelmingly Republican now and conservative. Everything's going to have a conservative agenda attached to it, which is horrid. And me and myself, I felt like really hard that I've I probably want to leave the United States. And I felt I fought very, very hard about that. You know, what would it mean if I left the United States? What would it mean if I became a citizen in another country? Because I don't see any rest or any peace after this situation. And they're going to start putting limits on free speech as we speak. There's going to be limits. But the biggest issue, as I've stated, they're going to start clamping down on people who aren't conservative. And I'm afraid of that. These companies, these businesses, whether they have conservatives or liberals, they're going to start looking at people and start distancing themselves or pushing people out of these jobs that don't identify as a conservative. They're going to play at the same playbook. And I'm telling you, it's not going to look good. This shit is about to get ugly. And I want you to know, I don't think I don't think we could ever come back from this unless certain things change with social media, which is probably going to happen. And I think after the funeral, which is next Sunday, I think either Donald Trump is going to start making a public speech on TV or he's going to start speaking to Congress. I think he is. I think it's going to be a special speech to Congress because it's just, I think he's going to have a massive agenda of retribution. I'm not going to talk about anything else because you already know what the rhetoric of the right has led to. Just know that the pendulum is swinging in the opposite direction at this point. And those that identify as the left might want to hide that fact, might want to tone down some of the rhetoric that they've been speaking about Donald Trump and about the Republican Party and people who identify as Republican. I think you might want to tone that down because these people right now, it's going to be some retribution. I feel like they're going to come after people. now that this has happened. I don't know if it's gonna happen today or tomorrow, but I just know it's gonna happen. Don't nobody smack a hornet's nest and don't get stung by the hornets. Just a fact. But this has been another episode of Media Talks TV with your host Tony J. Be sure to stay tuned. Got another video coming our way. Want everybody to take care and just be on the lookout, man. Cause shit is changing. And just like anything else, keep your eyes and your ears open. I'm out.